Hi, everyone. My name is Kiki, and I am from Meal Garden Professional, and I'm here with Justine, and we are about to host the very first ever webinar in this series. This is How You Wellpreneur, and this is a venture that I've started in order to connect with our fellow Meal Garden professionals in the community and for them to really help share their own insights in working with clients and talking a little bit about the niche that they work in, so that we can all take their tips and serve our own clients more effectively and offer them some more value. So I'm really excited that you guys are all joining me and that we have Justine here. Thank you so much, Justine, for being here.
Yeah, no, thank you, Kiki.
I'll give you guys a little bit of a further introduction of Justine. So Justine Cécile is a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, and she supports professional women who are struggling with raging hormones, even when they're on hormone therapy. So while working on herself and with clients, Justine discovered that there are 3 areas in women's health that are largely ignored. So the first being hormone health as a whole, and that's something that we're going to dive into today, gut health, and then how our mind works with our biology, which is something that I absolutely am obsessed with as well. So realizing that we are responsible for our own health, Justine brings her personal experience, education, and resources together to guide and mentor women to regain control of their health and their happiness. So we're going to talk a little bit about specifically what Justine does, hormone therapy. We're going to have this discussion for about 20 minutes, and then we'll open up the last 10 minutes or so to questions. So feel free to type them in on the side of your screen there, and we will get to them eventually. So Justine, I gave you, I think, a fairly good introduction, but if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and sort of how you got into this field and this niche, and kind of talk a little bit about your story so we can contextualize a bit.
Yeah, so I guess you might think I'm going through a midlife crisis, but I'm not, in a way, I suppose. I was in the military doing all kinds of things, and I've always had hormone problems myself, but what happened for me is that I developed fibromyalgia while I was in the military, and it was pretty severe. I was pretty paralyzed on my left side, walked around and had a big hump on this side. Every once in a while you can see I'm a little crooked still. And I was stoned, of course, 24 hours a day on narcotics prescriptions, but still stoned. So I left the military, and I was working as a professor at a university, and I got a job opportunity to teach aboard a ship that sailed around the Pacific. And it was right up my alley, and I love to travel. So I found a way to do it. Now, I still was suffering with everything, but I found a way to just force myself to do it. So it was really mindset more than anything at that point. There was more exercise involved. And just working through it, just pushing through the stuff. And the more I did that, the better I felt, actually. And so there was a lot of mindset, not really diet and things. But as I went along, I just kept fighting the whole VA system that wanted to put me on disability. And so I went to school. I'm kind of a lifetime learner anyway, got a few degrees. But I went to school, and there wasn't anything offered at the university that I taught at that I thought would help me. So I ended up going to health coaching school for myself. And so I was just coaching people that I worked around, just because I could. I wasn't really planning on it being a business. I had a really good job. I was actually, by the time I left, I was a software developer for the Army. And I was building, you guys all know Infusionsoft, right? I was building Infusionsoft for languages for the Army. And I had a whole team I managed and stuff. So I was in a pretty good place, right? But then I lost both my mothers in like 6-month period of time. And they were both pretty young, 68 and 73. And one died of a heart attack, and one died of cancer. But both of them had struggled with weight issues, hormone issues. They just had a ton of stress with their health for quite a while, even though they were both very active. My mother ate really pretty well, but she just had all these hormones. She had thyroid cancer when she was younger. So when I went back to work, I just wasn't satisfied. It just kind of, and so like 2 months later, I just quit. I trained somebody, I got somebody in. I told them about a month after that I was leaving. And I just quit. So I don't encourage anyone to just quit. You need to have a job while you build a business. But I decided that women's health was just not being adequately taken care of, because in my own case, nobody knew what to do with me, and they still don't. They just treat symptoms, and that doesn't work.
Yeah.
So as a health coach and as an FDN, I just went out there. But fibromyalgia started there, and I just realized, you know what, you have to break it down, because fibromyalgia is the queen bee of metabolic chaos, and it's just too big of a problem to tackle head on. And so when you're looking at it, everything has the mindset. Remember, that's what helped me through it. But it's the gut health and it's the hormone health.
Yeah.
Now, I was able to get off all my meds through diet.
Wow.
In January of 2013. And so diet for me and gut health became a really big deal. But hormones, the hypothalamus is affected by fibromyalgia, and that's the bridge between the nervous system and the endocrine system and your brain talking to it, right? And so that's your hormones. You got to work with that and your gut health. So everybody I talked to, you could just see these correlations. And so that's how I've narrowed it down to where I am today.
Wow. And it's amazing, because when you operate from, such an authentic place and from experience, you can give so much more value. So it's really beautiful hearing your story. And it sounds like there's a lot of different elements that you need to factor in when you're working with clients. So can you kind of describe that structure and kind of how your current business is set up and how you go about serving clients? Because it sounds like it is more of a holistic journey with your coaching, rather than like, a diet plan or, even just like a supplement.
Yeah.
So what does that look like?
Yeah, it's definitely the whole picture, but that's too big for people to take in sometimes, right? So when you start off, well, as an FDNP, I do a lot of diagnostic lab testing. So it's really important to test and don't guess things. But a test is still just a moment in time. Our chemistry is changing all the time, right? And so a test, if you treat a test result, you're treating a symptom. You're not actually treating the person. But it's really incredible good knowledge to have. It helps support things. And so you're not guessing wrong. So for instance, in hormones, a lot of people will go in saying they're feeling anxious and this and that, and they're given progesterone. And sometimes that's exactly the wrong thing to give them. They actually have too much progesterone in relationship with their estrogen. It doesn't happen all the time, but it can if you're guessing, right? So you really do need to do some testing. But you have to correlate it with the person's history. And when we're talking health history, it's not that 5, 10, 15 minute, little thing that they do at the hospital. You have to talk to them about traumas that they've had. You got to talk to them about what their diet's been like their whole life, how they've handled stress, how they respond to things. You got to take a look at how their day is during the week while they're working and what their day is like on the weekends. We have very different, fatigue levels and all these different things that are happening, how we respond to stress. So you really have to, spend a lot of time with them. Some of it, they're filling in assessment forms that seem redundant, but they help bring out the truth.
That was my question. Do you usually do that as a conversation, as an in-person? Is it filling out forms? And how long does that process kind of last before you feel like you've got kind of a handle on where they're at right now?
Both. So I make them, I talk to them, the first initial consult while I'm talking to them so I can get a general idea of what's going on. And I can get some, ideas about what I think might be going on. And then I give them, once they're my client, 7 ridiculous assessment forms for them to fill out. I feel bad for them, but, it's necessary.
Yes.
And then I take what they gave me from that, and then I do the conversation with them.
Okay.
And this is where I can expand and pull things out and really understand, because you need to understand the patterns, right? You need to look for the patterns. And then you determine which test you think would be more beneficial. Because a lot of tests will overlap or do things. Typically, though, I'm going to do a hormone, broad spectrum hormone. I'm going to do a Dutch test really for that. And I'm going to do gut health. I'm going to look for pathogens and stuff. Generally, those are the ones I'm looking at the most. But then from there, I can do metabolic profiles. I can do food sensitivity testing. I could do a bunch of things depending on what comes out of those 2 conversations and those assessment forms.
Okay. And just for the people joining us that don't know, because I didn't before you told me, and it was a very obvious answer, but I didn't know. You mentioned that, when traditional hormone therapy doesn't work. What does traditional hormone therapy even mean?
Okay, yeah. So traditional therapy, what's generally happens is as we're aging, we're going into perimenopause and menopause. And what's happening in perimenopause is your hormones are starting to sputter, right? Your ovaries are like, 1 minute they're like sending tons of estrogen out, and the next minute they're kind of not. So it's kind of up and down. But the general consensus is that they're starting to slow down and then go away because their task is done, essentially, right? You're not going to be fertile anymore. So, and then they start to come down. So what traditional therapy is, generally it's estrogen. I'll give you some estrogen because when you have the estrogen, it'll help. It helps with your bone health. It helps with a bunch of things. And then sometimes they add progesterone, and occasionally they add testosterone. So testosterone, if they're really fatigued or something, they might add some testosterone. But generally what they're doing is they're giving you hormones to help replace hormones that your body is no longer producing. And that would be great if that's all it was. So the thing is that naturally our body, if everything was in perfect running order, we really wouldn't feel too much discomfort with it. Maybe a little bit of fluctuations we would notice if we were really body aware. But if everything was in really good working order, and there are women out there that really don't feel any effects from menopause, it's just kind of a natural thing. We might feel a little bit, right? There might be some. But if you're having a lot of hot flashes or you're just really emotional, it's that your hypothalamus is getting mixed signals because you've got all this things going on. But your hypothalamus is not talking to your gonads, your ovaries. They're talking to your pituitary and your adrenals, your nervous system. Everything's coming in there. And so if you've got all these things going on, then your hypothalamus gets confused and it starts reacting erratically, right? And so traditional therapy can help lessen symptoms, but that's what it's doing, is help lessening symptoms. It's not really taking care of the problem. So there are, multiple root causes, and usually when I see people, they've got at least 3 or 4 of them out of 7 clusters, if you will. They're not very super specific. They're like clusters of what's happening. But that's pretty much what traditional therapy is.
Makes sense. And you know what? I recently read Medical Medium, and he talks about how, just like how you mentioned, how some women actually don't really experience that much of a negative effect of menopause. I think that we've created this image in our head that like, oh my God, menopause, and it's like crazy. But if you're functioning optimally and you're in optimal health, it actually shouldn't be this horrible thing that takes over your life for 10 years of struggles. You can actually just be a fine, and even like, dare I say, like pleasurable thing that's just a fine thing, but it's because of the lifestyle that we live in and the foods that we're eating, that we're not kind of adequately nourishing ourselves. and so our body isn't set up. Now, so can you talk a little bit about specifically like the protocols that you use and, the tools that you use, and maybe get a little bit more into the nutrition side of how you get people out of it?
Yeah, okay. So I use a system that I modified from the FDN's. They've got a thing called Dress for Health Success system, and I've modified it a little bit just because, remember, the mindset, and I'm a master mind mapping coach, if you will. So I do a lot of neuroscience stuff on how the brain works with biology to help get people to actually make those changes and stuff that they need to do. But it also helps them understand why they're behaving the way that they're behaving, which is really nice. So nutritionally, right, diet's there's a big piece called nutrition. The problem is, remember, we're talking about the nervous system, the hypothalamus and things. So the hypothalamus talks to the pituitary most often, and then it branches off to your adrenals, your thyroid, and your ovaries, your gonads. The thing is that gonads and thyroid are more like thrive hormones versus survival hormones. So it's really important that your thyroid and everything's working perfectly fine, of course, right? Your metabolism is what keeps you moving during the day. You have to have, that going. But the thing is if you don't survive, there's no reason to thrive, right? So your body is going to prioritize certain things. So the adrenal pathway is going to be a lot more, it's going to get more attention when it needs it than other things. And when that happens, if you've got a lot of stress or things going on, you're not getting the nutrition in. You're not digesting as well. It's not getting out. This is one of the things that really shocked me was I took interstitial fluid testing and stuff on myself when I was eating super well. I was juicing every day so that I could get nutrients through without the fiber getting in the way, right? And yet I was malnourished and dehydrated. Wow. And it's because as a person with fibromyalgia, my nervous system is my sensory system is much more hyper than, the average bear, right? So you have to really pay attention to that. So nutritional deficiencies are huge when it comes to hormone health. And if a person has experienced multiple trauma, they've got excessive stress, all those things, adrenal fatigue, even though it's not adrenal fatigue, but that's going to cause you to have nutritional deficiencies. Also, when we age, we have enzyme deficiencies, and typically we're not breaking down our fats, which is something that we really need. Fats and proteins, we need those for our hormones, right? And for those glands to be functioning really well. But we have a lot of diminished enzyme production, so we have to work there as well. And then gut health, of course, we have stress, you have pathogens, you have yeast because you're eating sugar, you don't have good bacteria because you're not eating enough green foods, so all of that stuff is going on. So nutritional deficiencies are huge when it comes to hormone health. Mm-hmm. It also happens with detoxification too. Also, if they're taking the wrong things, like every one of the core things has a nutritional component to it. Every one of the core problems. So diet is huge. First, we got to make sure they're eating right, but we also have to make sure that they're getting plenty of fats and carbohydrates. So the women I work with, 45 and up, but if they're like 50 or older, they're from the fat is bad era, and they still have a hard time with that. They still want to go low fat. They still want the low fat yogurt and the, stuff like that, but they need those healthy fats in order to produce the hormones. Mm-hmm. But you also need carbohydrates. So the keto diet, that's really great out there for so many reasons. It's very helpful. But if you're having hormone issues, you need to have 100 to 150 carbohydrates a day to help convert things over to what it is that you need, right? And but you need the right carbohydrates. Candy bar is not going to do it for you. So we have to work on the nutritional pieces. Yeah. And if we're going to tie it back to Meal Garden, I love to cook, but putting together meal plans and stuff like that is not my thing. But recipe collections for my clients is fabulous because I can really tailor it compared to their, food sensitivities to their wants and desires, the things they don't like and do like. But I can also expand their idea of what food can be, which is really, really cool.
And I was just going to ask, do you find, because with some professionals, they really like giving clients very specific, 7-day meal plans to start, and then going into recipe collections and kind of going that way. Whereas some other professionals kind of do it backwards and start off with just like, hey, look, I'm going to share with you 3 recipes this week that I want you to give a shot, and then eventually kind of build in more custom work. What have you found most successful with clients?
What I do generally is I use meal plans to help them see how they can cook once and eat twice or 3 times.
Gotcha.
So what I do is I give them a meal plan so that they can kind of get an idea of what they want to do, but I'm really into the recipe collections. And then I start off the same way. So here's a recipe collection, and I want you to just do this 3 times this week, pick something out of here or something similar. So we work it in that way, because if you do it all at once, they get overwhelmed. You've got to teach them how to do it in such a way that it fits in their lifestyle. And so that's why I like the meal plans, is because I can show them the structure of how they can make it more simple for themselves and how to do the shopping list with it so that they can develop it on their own. But meal plans don't last. They get really overwhelmed by trying to fit that in, but they're really good examples to show people how to do things. And so
it's almost like an end-game motivator, so to speak, but not necessarily the resources. And when it comes to keeping up momentum with your clients and sort of checking in and making sure that they're sticking with your recommendations, have you found any hacks for that in terms of like how often you need to check in with them, or like the protocol on checking in with them? Because that's a question that I get often, because it seems like they're so eager at the beginning and then they can oftentimes trail off.
Yeah, they can totally disappear on you. Yeah, absolutely. So what I do is I always start them off like once a week, and then we go to twice a week, and then it'll go to 3 or 4 times a week. So it does tailor off naturally with them. But I use Trello, so I make sure that they're checking in with me a little bit. And how I make them check in with me is not tell them they have to. I ask them very specific questions.
Okay.
But it might not be about their protocol. It might be about their family. Something otherwise. Because if I say something, let's say, I have a client I actually have one 22-year-old male who's in college.
Totally fits your demographic perfectly.
Totally, yeah. But I love working with him. I used to be a university professor, and he's in technology, which is my background, so it works. But what I'll do is I'll just ask him a question about his classwork.
Yeah.
And what happens is then he'll answer about his classwork, but then he'll expand, right? And he'll start talking to me about stuff I want to know. Yeah. So the easiest way to get them to engage is by being engaged with their life, and then they come in.
I love that. Yeah, because it takes the like cold or rigidness out of it, because I think that's the beautiful thing about working with a coach, or whether it's a health coach or otherwise, it's their your little angel on the side of your shoulder, and it's like what you said, there's a lot of mindset connections in there. And so just knowing your client as a human being and checking in with them on that aspect, then you'll get all of the information that you need to kind of piece together more of the logistics. I also recently heard that a really great way to just sort of check in with people, or to hold people accountable, is simply let them know that they'll need to share, even if it's just one sentence of what they've done in the past week, but with no judgment. They share it, and then like you'll share if it's kind of a co-accountability thing, but there's no, I was meant to do this, but then I didn't do this, and blah, 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 and excuses. It's just, I was meant to do this report. Actually, I didn't get to it. Aim to get to it next week. And just having that and putting it out there
Yeah.
holds that person so much more accountable. So it sounds like
Right.
you found that as well.
Well, to expand on that idea that you're just talking about, one of the things that I'll do is that if they didn't do something or they slipped or something like that, I'm like, well, perfect. That's absolutely perfect. So what was going on? What did you learn? And so then I get really excited about the fact that they didn't follow through.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting though, is now we start breaking it down and we start understanding what's going on. And we start looking at I never tell people, hey, get positive. I'm like, embrace the negative. And the reason is
Yes.
yeah, it's your subconscious telling you something, right? Yeah. So if I'm judgmental, it means I'm uncomfortable, whether I'm physically uncomfortable or like if I'm in a situation where I'm a bit of an introvert. So I can get a little overwhelmed of being in, too much. Mm-hmm. And then I start getting judgmental. And if I become aware of it, then I can go, okay, what's going on? Yeah. Why am I uncomfortable? And then I can fix it.
Yeah.
And so whenever somebody does something that's not, following step by step, well, that's just life. Now let's figure it out. And if it's the wrong path, then let's change the path.
Amazing.
Your environment
to learn, really.
Yeah.
And kind of tying it back to meal plans. I mean, I remember when I was just working with users directly using the meal plans before we brought in professionals. And there was a lot of guilt around like, oh, I didn't follow that meal on that particular day. And now I feel like a failure. And it's like, no, that's great to know. So maybe, planning your dinners isn't really your best strategy because you can't seem to stick to your dinner schedule. So what about we just plan your breakfast and, keep in mind the food groups to include in your dinners while you're out, because it seems like based on your schedule, planning dinners at home isn't really going to fly on the long term. So awesome. Let's use that as a learning opportunity and go from there.
Absolutely. So anytime there's something, quote, negative, it's actually a really cool positive. Exactly. And so I get very excited about them. And going back to your brain, so your brain, the conscious brain, the one that you and I are talking with right now, is all about wants and goals and stuff like that. But your subconscious is the one that actually rules, right? It's the one that actually dictates what you do moment to moment. And it's concerned with needs and it's concerned with desires. So I'll just pick weight loss because it's easy, because everybody wants to lose weight, but then they suffer self-sabotage all the time. Well, what they want is that they want to be loved and taken care of, and they want to be skinny and look great and be attractive and sexy, but they don't want to do the work because the work is hard, it's degrading, it takes too much time, they feel awkward, they feel all these things. So the desire is to be there but not do the work. And so you will self-sabotage yourself so that you avoid the uncomfortableness, the work, the things. And then you get mad at yourself saying, hey, I'm not losing the weight. But that's because you're ignoring the fact that there's a desire there. And so you have to work it out.
Yeah.
So that desire and the want coexist, and then you can get there.
Yeah. So really acknowledging and visualizing and manifesting that goal and not being afraid of it, pulling it out of the conscious.
Yeah, and understanding, hey, so those environments that we're in, people think we can't control anything that's going on in our head, but we can. And we can control what's going in our mouths, and we can control what our commute is like. And we can do so much influencing, which helps bring those needs, wants, and desires together. And then it works.
Really,
it can take time.
Simple yet powerful thing. Now we are going to wrap up in a few minutes. If any of the attendees have questions, you can type them in now. If not, I will ask one last question myself. And that's coming from a perspective of, for other professionals that are watching this, they're not going to necessarily be hormone experts or working in that niche and operating in that way. So what can you share to other fellow professionals that do come across clients that they're working with and hormone issues pop up, or they suspect that hormone issues are happening, what would you suggest? Would you suggest outsourcing to a specific test, or there's certain food groups that are always great to kind of include? Like, any sort of tips and strategies for us as professionals, as health and wellness professionals, but might not have that hormone expertise? Like, how do we navigate that?
Well, I mean, there's always testing, but honestly, if we just break it down to reducing stress, and one thing is you want to make sure you get rid of any pathogens. So you want to do a real good stool test, and you want to make sure that they break down the biofilm beforehand. So I'm telling you the words. If you don't know what those are, just look them up, or you can actually message me. That's totally fine. But you want to break down the biofilm before you do GI tract testing for pathogens, because they can hide out in the sticky stuff that otherwise they'd come out every time you eat a lot of fiber, right? So they hang out. So do pathogen testing always if they've got issues. Hormone testing, if you don't, you can do them. It's hard to do the testing piece when people aren't testers. Pathogens, it's they have it or they don't, right? Hormones, you need to be able to look at patterns and stuff. But food-wise and lifestyle-wise, what you want them to do is start working on reducing their stress. And how you do that is you get them comfortable with what's going on and start working with those negative things. Honestly, that's the ticket to reduce stress. Don't force people and tell people that positive and affirmations are great to a degree, but they're not what actually reduces stress. It's them having power to change their own environments that gives them the confidence to do what they need to do. Okay, so that means recognize when I'm pissed off, it means somebody is either stopping me from getting something I want or trying to take something away from me. So if my husband changes his plans and I'm pissed off at him, it's because he's taking away my plan. He's changing my plan that I had worked out. And then I can give it up, right? Or I can change or flow with it or determine no. But it empowers me. So do that. Food-wise, eat clean, right? But you really want them to make sure that they're not on a low carb or a low fat diet, either one of those. Okay. So they do need lots and lots of vegetables. I wouldn't say fruit and vegetables as much. It's more colorful vegetables, some fruit, and then healthy fats. So whether they put a teaspoon of oil on top of their vegetables after they cooked them, olive oils and stuff afterwards, but fat, and then enzymes, take digestive enzymes. Those aren't going to hurt anybody. Just make sure you take digestive enzymes. And then that should be the basics of what you do.
Super. So let me just retract that back. So number one, pathogen testing, get some poop and test it. And then two, really providing the nutritional feedback and consulting and suggestions, but always with the refreshing, with the reminders that, it's about how you're eating it and the headspace that you're in, and acknowledging what's coming up in your circumstances and really coaching them through that. So it's not just a matter of, eat this kale salad. It's a matter of, reminding them that, that it's how they're actually, the headspace that they're in while they're eating that salad can actually be the determinant of if they're going to take all the nutrients from that dish or if not. And then, as you mentioned, not low carb if you're working with people that have hormone issues, making sure that they are getting enough of the complex carbs that they need to thrive, but then also not going low fat either, and incorporating those healthy fats, especially, I imagine, the monounsaturated fats, which work well for everyone on the whole.
Right.
Now, I do have some questions from panelists before we wrap up, attendees. So the first thing, what is Trellis? That's
Trello.
To help. Trello. So I believe that's like an additional.
It's an app, but it can be free. And what's nice is that it works with these cards, so you can put different columns of things, like if they're working on diet specific or exercise or test results, you can modify them, make them up. And if you use Zapier, what's really nice, if you have a package and they sign up, you can hook Zapier to create the boards for you. So the board's all, prepared ahead of time. But it's a great way to talk back and forth, and it keeps everything private, just you and your client. So it's just a really good tool for communication back and forth, and you can have it on your phone. So if somebody talks to me through Trello, I'll get a notice on my phone and I can talk to them. But it's a lot easier than Messenger because it's organized. You can put pictures and charts and links and things in there, and you can respond back and forth and comment.
Awesome. And you know what? That's really good to know, because we are currently working on communication software in Meal Garden, because that's something that we keep getting come up, is that, practitioners want to speak to their clients directly and in real time. So we'll take a look at how Trello works. Maybe steal some ideas from there, get inspired. But in the meantime, professionals, feel free to also check out Trello. And then someone also mentioned the
FDN, the Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. So FDN is a organization in South California. It's been around since mid-90s, and basically it is a we have an RH, we have doctors, we have registered nurses, we have naturopaths, we have health coaches go through functional diagnostic nutrition training. What it does is it gets into the nitty-gritty of the science. It's really cool, actually, if you're a scientist based. But we work with a board of medical directors who are all functional medicine doctors, so they can help us if we've got tough cases. It's a community where we really go through casework together and figure out what's going on, because some people can have some pretty strange stuff, right? Pretty metabolic chaos. But it's just we do lab diagnostics. We can interpret them. We can put things together. So it's really about, health coaching is broad coaching in a way, but functional diagnostic really puts you in the functional health mode and really pulls in the science with the testing piece. And so that's what FDN is.
And also with the community piece, which was the last, not really a question, but a comment that Deborah left for us, which was, as an RHN herself, she loves to be able to actually just refer clients to other experts such as yourself. So that's a really good point that I want to end on. Justine, how can people get in contact with you in case they work with clients? And I mean, I was just thinking the exact same thing. If I came across a client that I know actually has some real, hormone issues, I wouldn't necessarily want to just be like, okay, well, like healthy fats, let's go. I would rather just kind of, you need to work in this.
Right.
So how can keep in touch with you?
Well, you can always just email me at services@justinececile.com, which is what I'm writing here for you now.
Perfect.
Oh, it just went to all panelists. It should have gone to everybody, right? Yeah. There we go.
Yep. No, all panelists is good. That's what everyone has been doing, and I can also use that link whenever I share this video.
And then that's my domain name, so you can always go to Justine Cécile to see my website if you want to. But I would just email me directly, and if you need any help with what type of testing or something, I could consult, as long as it's not like hours.
or you'll be billing, which is totally fair. Well, thank you so much, Justine. I learned oh my goodness, a lot, and it was wonderful to hear your story, and hopefully everyone is able to take the insights that you've shared to further help their clients.
Thank you.
So thank you so much.
No, this was a lot of fun. I'm glad you're doing this. It'd be really great to meet others in the community, of course, and if somebody's doing something I don't feel that comfortable with, I'll send them to their way too. I love having resources like that. I think it's really important. So
Community is number one. We can't do anything on our own. So thank you so much. And see you guys next week for the next round. And hopefully, Justine, you'll be an attendee in that one.
I will. Yes.
All right.
I just registered for your new thing for professionals too.
Oh, so. Super. Good. All on that. Thank you, Justine. Have a great
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.